Awesome. Here today with none other than Sean Canning from 107 Architecture. We have a project on the docket to kick off one of your projects, Ticonderoga, which you designed. So we're pretty excited. I think that's going to kick off in June.
Awesome.
But yeah, Sean's been here since 2009, started his architectural firm, focuses a lot on modern and minimalistic design and some really cool modern buildings that, we're excited to be chosen to work on one, and hopefully we get to work on more together. But yeah, we're here on the From Dirt to Doorknob podcast. Sean and I are going to be primarily talking a little bit about struggles or challenges that you could potentially face when you are designing and building here in San Diego. And I know that you said you can talk about that all day. So what do you think some of the biggest concerns or the biggest struggles that someone who may not know anything about building or designing, what are some of the first things that people need to really understand?
Well, that's a broad question.
Very broad question.
So thank you for the introduction. I appreciate being able to do this podcast with you. So the question is, what are the bigger challenges? I think we should probably break this down into the 4 categories we discussed earlier. Yep. So when you're trying to get a home built, there's really 4 major categories. You have to design the project,
Yep.
You have to engineer the design, then you have to permit the project, and then you have to build the project.
Right.
And at 1070 Architecture, we're trying to cover the first 3 of those. And we're not builders, so we need somebody like you to come in and build the project that we design.
Right.
So the challenge of design is that it's a huge gray area. There's no black and white answers.
Right.
Every decision you make comes with pros and cons. So we're here to help our clients evaluate, hey, if you go with option A, these are the pros and cons, and if you go with option B, these are the pros and cons,
right.
and which one fits your lifestyle. When you engineer a project, if the project isn't designed well, you end up with a more expensive engineering than you need.
Right.
So if we don't plan for structural engineering ahead of time, we end up with a lot more beams, and then that increases the cost. So that's something the standard homeowner who doesn't have any construction experience may not understand.
Right.
Permitting is its own challenge, and we'll cover that
Sure.
during this conversation.
Yeah.
At construction, I think you would probably say the thing the average homeowner doesn't understand about construction is everything that really goes into it. So, you may be just trying to build an addition in the back or maybe a small ADU, but there's a whole bunch of utilities that have to connect, and that could mean, trenching up your entire front yard. Maybe you just have new landscaping done, and now you're, just trying to
dig through it again.
Just trying to build a small ADU. All of a sudden, you end up with a lot more work just to get the utilities back to the ADU.
Right.
So I think the average homeowner really doesn't understand everything that goes into design, engineering, and construction, and how to keep things simple to reduce costs so the projects become feasible.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you're like me, you see a lot of clients come through the door expecting the thing not to cost that much. And by the time you end up figuring everything out, it turns out the project costs a lot more than they expect.
Right. So. Yeah. And that's setting those realistic expectations is something that we've found to be beneficial. We get underbid all the time by people that, say they can do it for $100,000 less. And I just look at them and I go, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. We're not just inflating our prices just to give you, sticker shock or shock value. We're trying to be realistic, and I do believe that this is what it's going to cost, whether we build it or someone else does.
Right.
So not trying to play that change order game and just be as transparent and educational as we possibly can for our clients. Mm-hmm. And, the ones that do end up working with us have a great experience because we set those expectations from the beginning, right?
Yeah. And Brian, you mentioned education. Building homes is different than building commercial projects because almost every homeowner you work with, it's their first time doing a project like this.
Right.
So you really have to educate them as you go through the process, and hopefully the client, the homeowner, is respects the architect and the engineer and the builder enough to listen to their expertise. Because we do have clients where we make certain recommendations and they just want to go the other way, and then oftentimes that ends up in a project that costs more, which is okay if they have the budget for it.
Right.
But when we're trying to keep costs down, it's important for the homeowner to take the advice of the people they hire.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the people who are really interested in learning and value that educational piece that people like you and I provide, those end up being the best clients. Those end up being the referral sources for future builds for friends and family. So it is really, I guess, interesting, especially in San Diego and all the different, as we already talked about, municipalities and struggles that come along with each. Are we building in a coastal overlay zone? Are we, trying to do, high density, lots of units packed in a backyard, right? So every project has its own kind of unique hurdles. If you're building, for instance, in like North Park, you're probably more than likely always going to want to get a soil survey, right? A lot of expansive clay in the area. We did a project over in Arizona and ended up having to dig down 17 feet.
Wow.
They have a nice underground parking space now, but we turned it into something, that's useful rather than just digging down and repacking. So,
Did you turn into underground parking? Oh, wow, that's cool.
but to your point, costs obviously
Right.
went up a little bit when we got to that point. So it's really just about trying to be creative and educating our clients and anyone who's willing to come into one of our events. We host ADU events. We do deal or no deal events here where people can come in with properties that they want to potentially invest in and build. And we do like a quick run through, does this pencil out? Does this look like a good investment? So we do a lot of educational events here. This podcast is obviously going to be one of them as well. Really just trying to get more content out to the general public and say like, hey, what are the first 3 things that you would need to know before, starting to build?
Yeah. Hey, Brian, can we talk a little bit about feasibility of ADUs? Because
Sure.
I find this to be really interesting. I'm starting to kind of come to the conclusion that like we may be in like the post ADU era, because I'm finding them more and more difficult to pencil out unless they're being built for specific reasons. So if you're going to build an ADU for your aging parents to move in, it makes a lot of sense because just how expensive property is here.
Yeah.
Let's say you buy $1 million property and you live in the home, and then you want to build an ADU in the backyard. You're going to be able to build that ADU for far less than if you were to buy a house for your parents.
Correct.
And you're also now on the same lot.
Right.
So building the ADU for aging parents, maybe building that ADU so your children, instead of living on college campus, could live and commute to college.
Still have their own space.
Yep. Or maybe even, a little bit more of an obscure scenario, building the house for your friend instead of them buying a house.
Right.
I have one client who's done this. It's kind of interesting.
I haven't heard of that yet, but
Yeah.
so those are some nice friends.
Yeah, and then also we're in the right now, like, multi-generational living, I think, is becoming more and more popular. And when property value is so high, I think it makes more sense. So I think that makes sense to build an ADU. But if you're trying to build an ADU for rental purposes, like people were doing, like I built my own in 2021. Costs were different back then. Interest rates were down. Construction costs was almost 50% of what it is right now. Permitting costs were down. And property value was lower than it is now. So it made sense back then. But I'm not so sure you can build an ADU now and make money as a cash flow property.
I think you can. I just think it takes longer to pencil out, right? The ROI on that investment's definitely going to take longer with longer permitting times, higher construction costs, higher permitting costs. I get your point. I think that there's a lot of hope that, they are promising interest rates are going to come down. And, if we can get down into even the 4s, it starts making a lot more sense.
For sure. Yeah.
And if that's a promise, and, typically rates are cyclical to a point, right? They're going to go up, they're going to go down. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So I think that if people can afford to do it, we always say, like, you can't really afford not to, because if it is a long-term plan for you and it is going to drive, passive income for not just yourself, but for your family, and it becomes like a legacy property as well, eventually it's gonna pay for itself and then generate some passive income. So it really just depends, how are you depending on that passive income? Is that like your retirement plan for the next 5 years? You're probably not going to get, the money that you're expecting until you pay the loan off.
Yeah.
People that can afford to pay cash, where you don't have to deal with the interest rates. I'm seeing a lot more of that.
If you have cash, it does seem to make sense.
Yes.
But once you got to take that loan out and you're subject to the interest rate on a construction loan or even HELOC,
Oh yeah,
it's harder and harder to make them pencil out.
for sure.
And the reason this is so interesting to me is because while I have built ADUs for myself, my wife and I do some really small scale infill developments on our own rental properties. But where I live right now in Logan Heights, we purchased the single family home for $400,000, and I have a large backyard, and I cannot seem to get an ADU to pencil out. And keep in mind, I get the architecture for free, essentially.
And you know a couple people in construction. So.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get this thing to pencil out at incredibly low construction costs, which I don't even think would be reasonable. And it's the money would probably be better invested into like the stock market. So I've landed on kind of a creative solution.
Okay.
And keep in
Tell
mind,
me.
like,
Are you gonna go get your GC license? So the architecture and the building's free?
well, no, well, maybe. So this is kind of this thought is a working thought, so I haven't kind of come to this conclusion yet. But I think I can make a garage pencil out because the regulations on the garage is far less,
Right.
and the permitting process for building a garage is a lot less, right? And if I could design the thing so that I could build it, which is very challenging. I mean, there's maybe a truss roof, maybe keeping it to a single story, maybe designing the plate height so it's 8'4.5", so I don't have to cut down any studs. Just doing it like very simply. And then in the city of San Diego, you can permit a garage with a 3/4 bathroom in it.
Right.
So I think I can make the garage pencil out using the garage as a future workspace, because right now my office is in North Park.
Right.
But it's expensive in North Park. But I could build the garage, condition the garage, insulate the garage, have the bathroom in the garage, even put a kitchenette in the garage on the permit. And then
Would you permit that as like a guest quarters then?
I would permit it as a garage because
Okay.
with the new ADU regulations, you can then convert the garage to an ADU. So I can get the easiest regulation, the easiest inspection, because it would be inspected as a garage. And then the only thing I would have to do to convert it into an ADU is just like file another permit. And I can do that in, a year or two down the road.
Right.
If I ever want to make it an ADU. Because the way the new code is written, with a single family home on the lot, you can build a detached ADU and you can convert an unconditioned space, or you can convert a garage space, non-livable space. So the garage is the first step for me to get 2 ADUs on the lot. So why not just build the garage first?
I think that's a great little loophole mindset that not a lot of people, like I haven't personally thought about taking that route and taking the advantage of lower regulations, lower permit fees, essentially making your process as smooth as possible and easy as possible.
So the permit for the garage would be $1,300. The permit for the same size, exact same design ADU is $7,500.
Right.
So you get a drastic
Huge.
reduction in permit costs. And to make these things pencil, you have to like drive all of the costs down
Right.
as far as you can.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like that approach. Is that something you guys are planning on doing in the next near future?
Maybe.
You're still working on it?
I've had
You're still doing the numbers and
Still working the numbers.
Okay.
But the fear I have is if the purpose of the ADU was to alleviate the housing crisis, but I can't even get it to pencil out on a property that is $400,000, which you cannot buy anymore in San Diego.
Right. No.
It doesn't seem like we're going to solve the housing crisis with ADUs. So then what is the next angle so that homeowners can afford these things? And maybe it start with the garage. But the problem is, like with me, I can make the garage work,
Right.
because I can transfer my office rent to just the garage and build the garage as a home office.
You subsidize your rental costs for the office, right? So
My architecture business would be paying my development business rent, basically. So I don't know, it's an interesting take, but I feel like maybe we're post the ADU era and moving on to the garage conversion
I think
era.
that seems to be penciling out a lot better. There's the allure of having a detached structure, so there is a little bit more separation if you are trying to do something for the housing crisis, right? To provide more habitable space. One, I bought my home primarily because I saw the garage and fell in love. That's my wife's favorite thing to say. Oh yeah, he saw the garage and he's like, we're buying it. Because it's 530 square foot, 15-foot ceilings. I could park an RV in there. So like I personally know I could convert that into a pretty cool unit, but like I also like my garage space. And what I'm worried about is there's so many people looking into garage conversions as options, that as we see more and more of those and less garage space being kept as garage space, I think that the homes that have garages in the future are going to be valued much higher.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm trying to hang on to mine for as long as I can, but I would say, 5-10 year plan would be to convert it at some point.
Yeah.
But I think it helps with the resale value, and just doing detached does give you a little bit more space and freedom. I have 2 young kids, so I don't want necessarily like renters stepping on our toes.
Yeah.
So there are pros and cons to every single one, and like you said, it's very dependent on what the purpose is.
Right.
If you're doing it for personal space and you can write off some of the costs to yourself, right? I don't think a lot of people have that option, but that's a really easy way for you to make it pencil for yourself.
Yeah, but also the garage, the one thing that I'm a huge advocate of is designing spaces that are flexible for people to use. And I think a lot of times people hear ADU and they think, okay, that's going to be a rental unit and I don't want tenants on my property. And also in the same line of thinking, I think people hear garage and maybe they're like, I actually already have a driveway, I don't need a garage. Or they hear garage and they think, okay, that I have to park my car in the garage. But there's actually a lot of different uses of these. An ADU, at least if you're going to build the first ADU, you don't have to rent it. So it could become the guest house for when you have family in for the holidays. It could become a home office if you work from home or want to work from home. It could be a home gym. There's a lot of different uses. You could design an ADU that could be used as an accessory to your backyard. So you have a big, maybe you have a pool and you have a grill area, and now the ADU opens up with a retractable door.
It's pool house, guest quarters, yeah.
But technically it's an ADU, so 10 years in the future, maybe you move somewhere else and now you can rent the ADU and you can rent the dwelling unit. So I'm a huge advocate of spaces that are designed to be flexible, and also the garage. Like I've designed garages that are intended to be used as home gyms. I designed a garage almost a decade ago in North Park, and the goal was the homeowner was a personal trainer, and they wanted to be able to bring clients and have a spot to work out. So we designed like a giant garage. All you have to do is meet the minimum regulations of the garage, which is just got to fit one car.
Which is, not a lot of regulations.
Yeah, and if you can put a bathroom in there, and you can put a 3/4 bath in the city of San Diego, it starts to open up different opportunities. So I'm a huge fan of flexible design.
I think that's great, and I think that more people need to be offering that kind of stuff, because in this landscape of San Diego, every neighborhood is so different, topography-wise, soils-wise, utilities-wise, right? Are you underground? Are you overhead? Do we need to get SCG&E involved? And that is something that also can prolong your process.
They're almost the worst of all of them. Like, we'll talk about permitting challenges, but I think SDG, you've had some experience with
I
SDG.
have. I'm just saying hi to my friends at SDG&E, though. We love you still.
We have finished projects that we cannot move tenants into these projects because SDGE has not yet connected the electric. So what are the timelines you're seeing from SDGE?
So they're doing a couple things. I actually sit on a committee with the BIA, a subcommittee for working directly with SDG&E. Some really cool things that they're doing is they're currently in the process of putting together like a training and certification course for builders within BIA, me being one of them, so that we would basically get a certification and get a number saying that we've been trained extensively in the process of working with SDG&E, and that is supposed to at least help us out. I'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah.
But really, the timelines can range. Really, again, depends on the project. But if you're not proactive, and that's why we have people that come to us and, hey, I have permits, I want to start building now. Okay, well, have you talked to SCG&E yet? No. Okay, let's get you in the queue. Sometimes that's just getting them in the queue is a 4-week just to get an appointment to get a work order. So that's a month already, right? That we can't get started. And a lot of these people, especially if it's an investment property, are going to be holding on to the loan for longer than they need to due to delays, and that costs quite a bit more money and really makes the project not pencil out. So always about trying to be as proactive. We have a third-party consultant that comes in and works on the bigger projects for us and handles everything SCG&E, makes the whole process much smoother. On the smaller projects, I sit and I help people walk step by step through like getting into the queue and doing it as early as possible, so that when we do have stamped plans, we're ready to go. We have tent power, we have panel upgrades, we've addressed solar issues. So really just trying to be, like I said, as proactive as you possibly can. But the timelines can be, we've seen anywhere from 3 to 7 month delays.
Yeah. And, when there's all this initiative at the state level to rush the ADU permits, because permitting takes forever. So they've already created deadlines for the building department to respond to our ADU submittals, but there's no deadlines on SDGE.
No.
So they become the bottleneck. But if you build a garage, you don't have to deal with SDGE.
Title of this episode is Build a Garage. And we have someone who can design it for you.
Have an architect design your garage.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. No, I think that's the only thing that really for me would make sense is the garage at this point. But
we can't get SDGE to engage with us until the permit is issued. But oftentimes we want to plan ahead for utilities even before we submit for permitting. And the building department, when you submit for larger projects, they will assign SDGE as a reviewing department, and you'll get comments from SDGE on larger projects. So if SDGE is going to be so difficult to work with on our smaller projects, I would just ask for the building department to assign them to SDGE so we can iron out any utility challenges through permitting, and then when you get the plans, you're ready to hit the ground running.
That would be ideal.
That would be a simple solution, and I'm pretty sure there's room in SDGE's budget to do this because we pay a lot for utilities.
Yes, we do. I think we're still up there, maybe number 1 or number 2 in the country for kilowatt prices. So, I would love to see a more streamlined process, and that's something I would love to talk about in the committee next time we have a meeting, which I actually think is next week. But that's good. That's good insight, and I think that if we could figure out how to get the two to talk to each other earlier on, we're saving money, we're saving time for our clients and for ourselves.
I had a SDGE relocate my gas meter at no cost to me.
How? What's your secret?
It was a long process. This is maybe my most successful win as an architect dealing with regulation. So I had purchased a property that had a single-family home, which is where I live right now in Logan Heights. And the property next door was a vacant lot and was all owned by the same owner.
Okay.
And the owner was initially a client of mine. And I explained to him that even though he purchased that as one lot, it was actually 2 legal lots. So he would be able to sell the vacant lot separate from the home.
Nice.
Which provides a lot more value for him.
Totally.
And at some point he determined he didn't want to live in Logan Heights anymore. He wanted to move. So I said, well, I would be happy to buy this house for you. This was all like pre-COVID. And so he ended up selling me the home, and then general contractor I work with ended up buying the vacant lot next door. But the one thing we overlooked was the gas meter for the existing home was on the vacant lot. And it was all the way on the other side of the vacant lot. So it was like really, really far away.
Yeah.
And I had never even I'd only been on the property one time visiting him before we made all these arrangements. And at the price he was selling it to me, I would have bought it either way. But anyway, we designed 5 units on the adjacent lot, the vacant lot. And through that process, we realized, oh shoot, the gas meter is on the other side
on the
vacant lot. So the contractor filed to go through all the process with the utilities with SDGE, and then SDGE contacted me and they said, hey, it's come to our attention that the gas meter is on the neighbor's lot and it needs to be on your lot. And I said, yeah, I totally agree with you. It should be on my lot. And they said, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for this. And I said, well, why would I pay for this? I'm the homeowner here and my neighbor is doing a development. And they said, yeah, but you're on the hook for it. I said, okay, no problem. But now I need to understand how I can make how I can make my neighbor, all my clients that I'm designing homes for, I want to understand how I can make their neighbors pay for their utilities. And SDG is like, oh wait, actually, the homeowner is not responsible for
Yeah.
this. So it
Nice.
took months and months of arguing. I eventually got the supervisor of SDGE to come into my office to have this conversation.
Wow.
So she sat down. I kind of iced her for like 10 minutes. I just said, yeah, sit in the office. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And I just waited in my office.
Nice.
So I came back like 10 minutes late. I never do this, but I just wanted to make sure I had the upper hand in this conversation.
Yeah.
And then I went through the whole thing. I was like, hey, if I'm going to be paying for my neighbor to relocate his utilities, then I just want consistent treatment for all my clients. And then she agreed that they would relocate it at no cost. They did all the right-of-way work in the street, got the
Wow.
permit.
And it's not cheap to relocate a gas meter.
Yeah, it's probably 40, 50 grand. Mm-hmm. And
That is a big win.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the only ones I've heard of that magnitude with SDG&E.
And while we were going through this, so we had like multiple meetings on site where SDGE would bring like 5 to 7 people, and they were swearing. They were like, SDGE never makes a mistake, so this is clearly like not our fault. And while I'd done all my research beforehand. I had the news story for the wildfire that was found to be SDGE's fault, and it destroyed all those homes. Yeah. I had the article in my hand in case he was going to say SDG never makes a mistake, and I did not even.
Oh, didn't have to do that.
I didn't even have to.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. You're like, well, here's some proof, real quick.
Yeah, that was a big win for me. I was really happy.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Cool, man. And I understand it's your wedding anniversary today.
6 years.
Got 6 years. Going out to a nice little lunch. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you think the listeners should know about you, 1070?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess the people who will watch your podcast are probably not familiar with me, so maybe I should give a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah.
So my business is called 1070 Architecture, and it's run by my wife and I, and we also have 3 employees, so it's just the 5 of us. We specialize in boutique architectural design, mostly residential, mostly modern and minimalist, although we do work in craftsman and Spanish styles, and we do a lot of stuff in between. Sometimes somebody wants craftsman, but they want it to be kind of modern. Mm-hmm. We work with clients to figure out what they want. My preference would be minimalism, and my wife as well. It's probably our least requested style. Mm-hmm. It looks good in photos. It's probably hard to live in a minimalist home.
Yeah, you have to really have a mindset to do that.
Yeah. So earlier you asked me what the name 1070 Architecture comes from. So my wife's name is Margaret, and we met in architecture school in New Jersey. We were both studying to get our 5-year Bachelor's of Architecture degree, and we started dating midway through the architecture process. When I graduated, I moved out here to San Diego, and my wife continued 1 more year to get a master's of civil engineering, and then she moved out here. And we moved out here in like 2009, and it was like the height of the Great Recession. So nobody was hiring architects.
Right. No one was spending money they didn't need to spend.
Right. I mean, you can look at the construction industry. If contractors are not being hired, architects only work on like 10% of jobs of construction. So if nobody's hiring contractors, even less people are hiring architects. Mm-hmm. You know, and I just had a college degree, so I wasn't technically an architect. When you graduate with a 5-year bachelor's degree of architecture, you're not legally allowed to call yourself an architect, which is frustrating as a recent graduate, because you're like, I have a degree. You can't use the term architectural. They're like protected terms, and the only recourse for people using these terms is that the architecture industry can ban you from becoming a licensed architect. So
I did not know that.
If you as a contractor are using the term architect or architectural on your website, the architecture industry can like send you a very angry letter and say, hey, these are protected terms, you cannot use them.
That's crazy.
But their only recourse is they can ban you from becoming a licensed architect. So the only people it's really hurting are architects. Graduates.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it's supposed to set us apart from drafters and building designers and things like that.
Of course.
But so the goal was to move out here to Southern California. Initially, we were targeting Los Angeles, but when we came out here and took a vacation in San Diego, we determined San Diego.
Sold.
So the 2 of us started the business I think around 2010 or 2011, a couple years after he moved out here. It's impossible to come up with a name. I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you know.
I didn't have to come up with ours, so yes.
I spent years playing guitar in different bands in New Jersey, and the hardest part about playing guitar in bands was coming up with a name for the band. It was impossible to do. We'd go through like so many different band names, and I did the same thing when I was trying to come up with a name for my architecture firm. So 1070 comes from 1070, and 1000 is the Roman numeral for M, which is my wife's first initial, and 70 is the Latin Roman numeral for S, the first initial of my name. So I was playing around with this, and then it became 1070, and then I was like, let's just call it 1070. It sounds cooler. So 1070 Architecture was born.
Cool.
And the reason we mostly focus on the city of San Diego is because when I started the architecture business, my wife was working for the city of San Diego in the building department. And she started as a plan reviewer, and she moved up to a development project manager 2 level. Before eventually she ended up working for a large home builder that does like lots of homes. And then like the big home developments where they do like 1,000 homes.
Right.
And then she started to work for me because COVID was kind of around that time was when the ADU regulations hit, and that became a huge boom for like 3 years for us.
Yep.
So because she had all this experience working in the city of San Diego, that became our expertise. And one thing that homeowners may not understand is that every municipality has their own regulations. So I can't come from city of San Diego with my expertise and then go design a home in San Francisco without hours and hours of new code research to determine that. And then the other thing is like the municipal code is so niche, especially in these big cities like San Diego, that there's a bunch of unwritten stuff that you just don't know unless you've been working in the city. And as permitting became more and more of a challenge over the years, when I started this business, it would take 3 to 4 months to get a permit. And I remember homeowners would complain, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking 3 months to get a permit?
I wish.
And now fast forward to 2026, and now it takes 8+ months. 8 months is generally what we're telling our clients. It's going to be about 8 months.
Yep.
So permitting times have doubled, but when the city switched to the digital XLS software, that was done to streamline permitting. So the city streamlined it, and it doubled permitting times.
Yeah.
So we saw that as the challenge, and we began integrating permitting into our design process. So from the very start of a project, we're looking at what type of permits can be required, what are the thresholds that are going to make this a larger project from the eyes of the building department, and how do we stay just under those thresholds? Right. Because if you zig where you zag, you can end up with a very complicated, expensive project. So anyway, after 15 years, we specialize in residential architectural design, mostly in the city of San Diego, and we're really good at working with homeowners to get the design they want. We have engineering consultants we've been working with for 15 years. So then we engineer the project, then we permit the project in-house. We don't have to hire a third-party permit runner, which a lot of companies would do because of how niche the permitting process is. So we're doing that in-house. And then the next step is try to pass the project off to a builder who is capable of building what we've designed. Awesome.
Yeah. Pretty easy stuff when it's all said out loud like that, but still can be a very arduous process. And working with an experienced architect like yourself, an experienced builder, that's really where you're going to save yourself some time and money. You're going to get some value engineering opportunities from people that have actual experience. So I definitely value you coming in. I value our partnership. I wanted to say thank you for coming in, and I know you have a lunch to get to with your wife.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, man.